Today I want to talk about something that really isn't spoken about enough, especially when you become more well off and have more money. And that is the trap of attorneys and attorneys' fees. Attorneys, in theory, should be there to protect your best interests whenever you are wronged or in a situation where your freedom is in jeopardy. That is why they are absolutely crucial sometimes, but then other times they are just the worst leeches that you can almost never get rid of. So, when it comes to becoming wealthy, most people likely never have to encounter on a day to day life a lawyer, nor should they. Why would you ever need a lawyer in any normal situation? So there's a lot of things like accidents, accident attorneys. If you're in an accident, attorneys often will text you and jump and claim to be on your side and claim to be your helper, your guide, your almost your partner, your buddy. Never, ever, ever is that the case. Lawyers are often compared to bankers in the financial industry, not because they serve no purpose. Lawyers absolutely serve a purpose, but lawyers, for the most part, are in it for one thing and one thing only. Not for the money, but for the fees. If lawyers help you, that's great. They get to charge more people more fees at the end of the day, and they'll be able to win. The better reputation a lawyer has, the more, oftentimes, the more people they can kind of coax into paying for their services, whether that's through retainer or winning fees. It doesn't necessarily ever go in your favor, but it will always go in the lawyer's favor. There's a lot of places that claim, oh, we will only have you pay if you win. That is not true. There is costs associated with everything. Nothing in this world comes free. And when you start to get more money, a lot of lawyers will start to coax you into litigation, making emotional decisions, making decisions you oftentimes would never make with a sober mind and a clear heart. Because lawyers, sure, they may appear to be on your side, but at the end of the day, lawyers are in it for one thing and one thing only: the fees. How much can they extract out of one case or one transaction in cases similar to finance? Financial advisors, in theory, help you make money. Financial advisors, in theory, are there, they're on your side. You're going to trust them with your investment. And with lawyers, oftentimes, unless you're a criminal fighting for your freedom, lawyers are not on your side. And the fees that they talk about that often aren't discussed enough, their fee is something completely different to costs when it comes to court cases. Because they're still going to bill you for any costs they incur. Whether they win or not, the fee is variable. But the costs that are associated with legal battles, especially when you get to the upper echelons, when you're going into trademark disputes, when you're going into like high civil suit cases, especially when involving like a theft, IP theft, anything of the sort, lawyers aren't on your side. They never will be, they never have been, and that's going to be the way it is for a long time. It just is what it is. That is how it is. There is no such thing as justice in our legal system. A lot of people are already very much aware of this fact, and yet still we fall into this trap daily, thinking, oh, we have someone on our side. That is almost never the case. A lawyer is almost never on your side. They can be fighting for you and representing your best interest, but what does that even really mean when you're discussing, a potentially life-altering legal battle that could leave you not with just burdens like financial burdens, but also mental scars? It takes such a toll on you to fight a litigious battle, and they don't really talk about that. Also, the bigger problems when it comes to lawyers is that they are almost untouchable by the law because oftentimes they think they are the law, and normal people can't really fight against them. And for the most part, they're right. That's why they have such an enormous lobbying group, much bigger than the insurance industry that we have grown to love so much in America. Insurance has been often cited as America's number one problem, But in reality, it's just kind of like the decision to allow people to legally change the law for their best interest, as in lobbying. It shouldn't really be the case. Money will always influence law and decision. Should it? No. But that is just the way we've let our financial system run amok over the years. But honestly, there's not really such an idea of justice anymore. If you're fighting a litigious battle and people want to find justice, you will not find it in the American legal system. It just doesn't work. Usually the person with more money will oftentimes win, or the person who just wants it more will win. It's not really a matter of making things right or making things equitable at all. It's almost always the case where if you're fighting a legal battle, either you need to have more money or you need to just hate the other person so much more, especially when it's a civil matter. Lawyers are very important when it's a criminal case, but when it's a civil matter, you either need to hate the person more or you need to have more money than the other person to basically spend as much as you could think about. As much as you can conceive, you'll do that. That's why often divorce lawyers make an insane amount of money, because these two parties will never agree on anything. And that's why lawyers who are in it for the divorce, oftentimes they're not the scummiest people alive, but they really are not in the best interest of anybody in any particular case. Lawyers, especially when they're doing legal cases like divorce, they're not trying to find something that's equitable for both parties. Oftentimes they're trying to delay the proceedings to be able to collect more and more and more fees. That is a huge trap a lot of newly wealthy people fall into that I really don't think should be allowed, but it has been. And it's been a problem and a plague since our system has been allowed to let people lobby for their best interests. It's not right. It never will be right. It never has been right. But it's just the reality we live in. And when you first get wealthy, lawyers are going to often, especially if you have one little legal hiccup, lawyers are going to convince you and try to talk you into paying things that, quite honestly, you don't ever need, nor do you want. But lawyers will oftentimes, like used car salesmen, trick you or talk you into buying things that really aren't that great. So when you start making money at first, be very, very aware of this trap, especially if a lawyer is your friend or a party that you trust and respect. They're not going to be in it for your best interest. They're going to be lining their pockets the entire time. I know I sound very, very negative when speaking about this subject, but it's something that, multiple times, unfortunately, I've had to see firsthand and be involved in firsthand. It's not something that's pretty. It's not something that's glamorous. It's not something that's wonderful. It is unfortunately the reality of when you start to become not wealthy, but just if you have a little bit of money. It's like they have a sixth sense and they're like, okay, this person's either scared or they just don't know what they're doing. They have no idea, what we're really in it for. It's a trap. I really don't think a lot of people understand what litigation looks like, what it feels like, and what the general costs are. I think that a lot of newly wealthy people get tricked, coaxed, and fall into this mistake very early, and it ends up ruining them or messing with how they do things later on and how they consider things. If there's a legal battle looming and it's unavoidable, yes, pay it. If there is something you can do to avoid a legal battle at all costs, always try to avoid it as much as you can. That's pretty much it. Just a word of warning. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, subscribe, and thanks.